Today is December 2nd, 2021. In Lubbock, Texas, it is 70 degrees under bright, blue, cloudless skies, and on the South Plains, another semester's classes just came to a close at Texas Tech University. Tomorrow offers yet another iteration of the First Friday Art Trail, and on Saturday, vaccine clinics hosted by the City of Lubbock will again administer COVID-19 shots and boosters in an effort to protect residents ahead of the upcoming holidays. Meanwhile, as today's history shapes itself, we sat down to speak with David Walker. After spending his early years in Colorado, he moved to Lubbock as a child, and despite deployment during the Vietnam War and sojourns in Houston, he has lived in Lubbock through most of his life with his wife and children. His is a tale of an idyllic childhood, a devastating injury while stationed overseas, and a successful career in radio broadcasting. Currently a student in the Creative Writing Master's program at Texas Tech University, this is David's untold story.
Some of these questions are a little funny, but they're meant to sort of jog memories and hopefully. So the first question I have for you is, can you tell me 3 pairs of shoes that have been important to you over your life?
Sure, absolutely I can. Number one would be my high top tennis shoes when I was a little boy, because every boy wanted them, and they were kids, although they were all some off brands, but the high top tennis shoes were a thing in the 50s and 60s. Secondly, it would have been my jump boots in the Army, airborne, style jump boots that I wore those. I still have them, as a matter of fact, because they were my brother's, who was in the Army too, and he gave them to me, so the value was just enormous to me. So I wore those for those years, and then I guess after that, let me think about shoes. I can think about when I was a young reporter and the way we dressed, and we were very professionally dressed and all that sort of thing that looked good on there. I actually bought some Oxfords, and they looked. I mean, they were just a little more expensive than I should have bought, but they were kind of cool, and I was really wanted them to be. I wanted to look. I wanted to look professional, so I thought that would help me look professional, although I doubt it. But yeah, I would say those were the 3 pair of shoes I could think of.
Great, thank you. Okay, so when did you last sing to yourself? And what did you sing?
Sing. Oh my gosh. Probably it was a Beatles song, and I was just watching the documentary that they have on Disney right now, and I was probably singing along to Get Back, or actually Two of Us. No, it was called The Two of Us. You know that song? Two of us riding coats, so yeah, that would have been it, because all the Beatles songs. People my age have all the Beatles lyrics going in their head all the time, and it's a curse. So
People my age have absorbed some of it too.
Oh, I love, of course, I loved all of it. So
when did you last cry? In front of someone or alone?
oh man, it would have been I have a nephew. One of my brothers is 21 years older than me. We had, oldest family. So his oldest child was 2 weeks younger than me, and so he was my best friend growing up. And he died about 2 months ago, cancer. And so yeah, that would have been it.
Sorry to hear that. If somebody made a movie about your life, what would it be about, and who would play you?
It would be a dyslexic mess, is what it would be. And who would play me? Oh my gosh. It's something I've never thought about. I have no idea. I don't have any favorite actors particularly. I don't watch a lot of movies anymore. It's pretty rare, but truly, it might be dyslexia. I don't know, because I am dyslexic, and it's like navigating the world through the dyslexic view or mind. It'd be a tragic comedy, I think, is what it would be.
Is there anything about yourself that your friends and family would be surprised to learn?
Um, how insecure I am. That would be it. I'm sure my wife would know that, but yeah, probably, because I've always been out in front of people. I don't like to be in front of crowds, but I'm always in front of crowds. I'm always in the public eye. I'm always done that kind of stuff. Maybe that's just out of self-defense, but I always take leadership roles. Always, you know, I'm a lieutenant still in the Texas Guard, and so yeah, they'd be kind of surprised at how much I don't like that. I really, really don't. So I'd rather live in the woods someplace. And anyway,
It's gonna be hard to find some woods around Lubbock.
you'd have a hard time finding woods around, especially native woods, because there wouldn't be any. So,
What is your favorite photograph of your life? Can you describe it?
my favorite photograph of my life that I would be in, or any photograph that I would really, really like. Probably the Colorado mountains. You know, coming into Colorado Springs off of I-25, it used to be 85, 87. There's a beautiful. Well, I don't know if that's it or not. No, you know, probably would be the Colorado mountains. It's probably there's a road that goes from Rome up to southern Germany. It's called the Straße. It's the Romantic road, or it was the Roman road that came off the Appian Way, and it's still there. And there's a part in southern Germany coming out of Switzerland with waterfalls coming straight out of the mountains, and it is the most spectacular thing I think I've ever seen. These mountains are massive, number one, and they look like a manicured lawn, and the way it's so complete and pristine, and it's absolutely beautiful. And the Zugspitze in the winter in Austria it's a great place to ski, but it's spectacular. It really is. So, or I can think of some places in the South Seas that would be good too. But I think that'd be. Or you know what? The other thing that impressed me most, first time I was in Rome, you go to the Forum, and you realize what it is. You know, oh my gosh! And you think about the people who've come through there, and those ruins are there. There's some, you know, just the pictures, of course, but yeah, that's impressive. I mean, that's an amazing thing to think about. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I've been in a lot of places. So.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions that are loosely grouped into categories. So I'll ask you a few from childhood, and then we'll move on to family, friends, career, and life on the South Plains. And that
therapy, I need it. Yeah.
Feels like that, huh?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so I'm thinking about your childhood. Would you consider Lubbock to be your hometown? You were born elsewhere. Okay, so describe what you remember about your hometown before the age of 16.
Oh gosh. Smaller town. As we moved here, we moved to the Tech Terrace area when we moved here. And one of the most, the thing I think about is the first day of school, walking to school there, and then going through Wagner Park, which I absolutely love Wagner Park, and it became a central focus for Little League baseball, for playing, for picnics, for meeting friends, all the way through high school and before I left for the military. Lubbock was more than people could possibly imagine. It was an idealistic place to grow up. It was an extremely safe place. It was a very conservative place. Obviously, there were a lot of very friendly but very hardworking people. I don't know. I guess I would think of it as a place that would be complete in a lot of different ways. If you're going to pick out something for your children, then you might pick out a place like Lubbock. It has its drawbacks, obviously, but it also has its strengths. That there's an old saying that if you wear out a pair of shoes in Lubbock, then you'll never want to leave. I know a lot of people have moved here who just bitched and moaned, kicking and screaming coming in here, and then kicking and screaming if they had to go out. It's an easy and safe feeling place to live and to have some sort of a life. We always say Lubbock's in the middle of everything. It's 6 hours from anything. I mean, literally, or 9 hours. Did you know this is interesting? Lubbock is exactly in the middle of, if you're going to do a road, between Houston and Denver. We are exactly 9 hours from Denver. I've done that many times, and we're exactly 9 hours from, or faster if you dare to, from Houston. So it's kind of interesting to think of Lubbock. It's interesting to look at Lubbock on a map too, because if you look at it, and you're not just looking at the boundaries of the United States, you're looking at North America. Lubbock is pretty much in the middle of that, and it's and the people of Mexico know it, and that's why they like to do business here. If there's a distribution point, so there's some businesses here that do that. So anyway, so when I think about Lubbock, that's what I think about.
Great. So, did you have any nicknames growing up?
Not really. I mean, my dad always called me Davy, that sort of thing. But no, I didn't.
Who taught you to ride a bike?
Me. My dad brought one home one time and said, "Here's your bike," and I had to figure it out, just by grabbing it and running as fast as I could and jumping on the thing. So, but I was athletic enough to figure that out.
How did you spend snow days as a kid?
Shoveling snow. Up in where we live in Colorado, it snowed a lot. It seemed like it snowed even more then, and so in the mornings before we went to work, you had to shovel your walk. And everyone did that. I hated that. But I also had to shovel the walk next door for Mrs. Arthur, who was a widow. So my father would send me over to shovel her walk, and of course you didn't get paid for that either. So I shoveled a lot of snow, and we tobogganed a lot. There were hills where I lived, and of course there were mountains were not far away, but we liked to take there was a place called Big Hill in Pueblo that we used to like to take our sleds to and slide down that area. But school was never shut down for snow, not once. And it snowed pretty good, pretty deep, and we never got to go inside the building before it was time for the ring the bell. So that means you're outside in the snow, even if it was snowing. But we played a game called Fox and Geese, and ran around to keep warm, doing that sort of thing. So my dad hated the snow, and we all loved it as kids. So, but kids have a different perspective than dads do.
Who took care of you when you were sick?
My mom. Yeah. She was the one at home, and she kind of worked out of the house a little bit, but she was there.
Describe your first date.
Oh my Lord, let me think about that. Completely, totally awkward. It probably was for her too. I remember her name was Tess Ashdown, and it was in high school. I was pretty shy. I didn't date much. I mean, I just didn't. So we had a good group of friends, but we would have gone to a movie. I'm trying to think of what that movie was. I haven't even thought about this in forever. We would have gone to a movie. We would have, we might have gone to like a place like the Charking. Pretty sure. Charking was a drive-in hamburger joint. There were 3 of them around here. It was great. That's where everybody went. So we would have gone there, and I think I probably would have been, and she probably would have too, been worried about the goodnight kiss. How awkward is that? What an awful, awful tradition. unspoken tradition that is. Just, you might as well just, just kiss once, get it over with, and go have a good time. But that awkward, what am I supposed to do? And how do I do this? That would be a good thing to write, because it's so unnecessary. And I think it's a mutual experience. I'm sure she was as awkward about it as I was. So, and probably would have gone away going, ooh, what was that about? So yeah.
Do you remember when schools in your area were integrated?
I do, because they weren't. I'm growing up, I was in the very first part of desegregation. Matter of fact, I was born in 1954, the year the Brown versus, what was it, the state of Arkansas, was that it? Or the school district is what it was. It was, you're right. And I remember there was one black child in the elementary school I went to in Denver, and it didn't seem, we didn't think anything about that. I remember here in Lubbock, when we moved here, there were a lot more Hispanics here than where we had lived before ever, and we had probably one or two black kids that were in school with us. But I remember it wasn't. He even dated a girl there. Back then in the late '60s, early '70s, it might have been a bit of a problem for some parents, but it wasn't. Didn't seem to be. So the city was horribly and institutionally segregated. There was actually a law here prohibiting anyone of color from owning property across Avenue A. So a black family could have bought, or a piece of property, and maybe it was even questionable if a Hispanic family could. And I knew the police chief, because he'd been around forever when I was a young reporter, same when I was a little boy, same guy. But he was heavy duty enforcing that kind of a policy or law. So I do remember the signs with desegregation, with not desegregation, but for colored only. There were those signs. I remember a trip from Denver to Fort Worth on a train called the Texas Zephyr. I had a sister that lived in Fort Worth back then, so my mother and I took a train, overnight train to it. The reason why that's important is because we were in the back of the train. The only reason why I know that now is because we were sitting with black people in the back of the train. So if you couldn't afford a ticket anywhere else and you bought your ticket, that's where you were, and that's where everybody was. So from my mother's perspective, she didn't, I don't think she would have thought anything about that particularly, although those times were very, very different. So I remember we sat across from this mother and a black little girl that was probably about my age, and we played and played and played, and we didn't think anything about it. All these memories. Although I remember when the train ended up in Fort Worth, the little girl, was standing there. She touched my face, and then I touched her arm, and I just said, "You're black," and she was a little bit taken back by that, I think, and just kind of held on to her mom, just like I'd said something wrong, but I just kind of noticed, didn't notice that before, but it was. And I published a flash fiction piece about this very thing, or someone published it for me. But it was just this incredibly sweet moment. So.
When did your family first get a TV?
1957, and it was April. And the first show that turned on was a Disney show called Zorro. And I remember the commercial. It was brought to you by Action Spark Plugs, ACTION. All these things within my head like this. And I remember some of the lines and stuff like that. But before that we had a radio, a big upright radio in kind of the middle of the living room. We used to listen to the radio all the time. So I'm the last generation that really had that. There wasn't much after that, but all these radio shows kind of migrated to television, and Dad brought this in. It was used. It was a used TV, and he set it up in there, and put it where the radio was, and they moved the radio someplace I don't remember now, but set it up over there and put little rabbit ears on there. And it was kind of a fuzzy, grainy picture with ghosts in it and stuff. But television was so incredibly powerful back then. Of course, it still is today. But that people literally would watch either snow. We call it snow, because on the screen before it came on, they'd watch a test pattern. And I remember doing that. You'd turn it on early in the morning or whatever it was, and there was this test pattern on there, so with some Indian in the middle of it, and waiting for the first shows to come on. It didn't seem to matter what shows they were. They just it was such a technological breakthrough or thing to have that people would watch it. They'd go to other people's houses. Sometimes they'd stop outside, and if they could see inside a window or a downtown place that sold TVs, they would stop and watch, whatever was on TV at the time there and in front of this thing. So TV, I see, because I worked in TV most of my career, not all of it, but most of it before I owned radio stations here. But it is an incredibly powerful drug that it makes heroin look like it's for sissies. The addiction to it that I see as being a professional with this is damaging, I think, to our society, because it so controls our world that we live in, that I think it has the capacity of being one of the most evil things we have that's here. And when I would teach sometimes, with media and stuff like this, I would ask them, well, why are you wearing what you're wearing? Why are you eating what you're eating? Why are you driving what you're driving? Why are you saying what you're saying? And I could go through all that, and I could point back to television and what people would do that. It so changed America. It changed society beyond recognition. And I don't mean to go on and on about this, but I certainly could. It killed some industries, like it pretty much killed off about 50 to 60% of the theater business, for instance. There used to be community theaters all over these neighborhoods all around Lubbock, Texas. Over there at the Plaza on 26th Street. There used to be the Plaza Theater, right across from what used to be Furr's supermarket. Now it's a different one, but there were a lot of those little community things people would walk to, and they'd watch movies almost every night or every other night. When TV came along, two things went away. One of them was a lot of movie theaters. Now, there were still some around, obviously, that people would go to, but more on the weekends instead of the weeknights. And then minor league baseball. It's kind of funny about that, but minor league baseball was pretty big. The Lubbock Hubbers had been here since the 1920s. And then when TV came in 1952, then it started fading off. By the 1960s, it was just dang near dead, and by 1970, it was dead. But that experience happened all over the place. Most small towns had a baseball team. There were a lot more than there were today. There were a lot more leagues and stuff like that, and there was a lot, kind of a building block to going on to the top professional stuff. But yeah, it changed minor league baseball, almost killing it completely. Almost killed baseball completely, and it killed off a lot of the theater business as well. So, and it changed the dynamics, because families literally would sit down after dinner or during dinner with TV dinners or whatever, and they would watch 3 or 4, 5 hours of TV straight. There wasn't a lot of reading going on. There wasn't a lot of other stuff, but that's why this industry that I was in almost all my life, I consider evil. I think it's gotten worse. So there you go.
Speaking of you mentioned driving. Did your family have a car growing up, or
Sure.
what did you have?
The first cars I remember that we had, it was called a Hudson. It looked like a bloated tick. It was just this fat-looking car that you could put a family of 12 in there if you wanted to. And it was this massive metal going down the road. But then there were the other bigger cars that, like it was a car called the DeSoto. You might remember that or not, but it was so innovative. It had push-button gear shifts, which you never had to push really, except you're going to reverse. And it was these elaborate big cars that were made to look like airplanes. Almost all of them, and some of them were more than others. But it was the jet. It was called the jet age, and it was hardly the jet age because few people ever flew in a jet until the 70s. But the cars were all, they were named the Rocket 88, or there was an Oldsmobile, or there were other cars like that, like I have to stop and think about it, but Thunderbird, for instance, Thunderbird was built exactly like the cockpit of a jet fighter, and it was such a hot car, and it was that's the car everybody wanted. But we had that. But most families in America had two cars. Not all of them, but the vast majority did because they were so cheap. You could buy a used car for $50. You could buy a new car back then for just over $1,000, but it was hard to get $1,000 back then. But that's the way that used to work like that. So.
Who taught you to do laundry?
Nobody. My wife doesn't even let me touch the washing machine. Because my idea is you throw it in there, you turn it on, you put soap in, right? Is that it? That's all you do. So she doesn't like that. She's meticulous about laundry, and me, it's like, throw it in there, put some soap, turn it on. It'll dry out if it goes over. It's no big deal. So.
How did you meet your wife?
I met her seeing my best friend. I was just barely home from the Army. It was 1975. As a matter of fact, it was. September 4th, 1975, and it was at Methodist Hospital. The building's not even there now, but it was on the coronary care unit. My best friend had a heart valve defect, and he was getting a new valve put in, and she worked for the cardiologist up there, the cardiology associates, and I was in the room, and I went into the room to see my friend. And she was there taking care of him. She had been the nurse over there, so I was so suave and sophisticated. I said, huh. And it was like, she said hello, I go, huh. It's like, oh boy. And I thought about that. I said, boy, are you. But we had a date about a week later, and we started dating, and she's still the love of my life, and it's been all that time ago. So, yeah.
What was your family's best Christmas, or their worst?
Growing up, or when I had a family? Which one?
Either or both.
I don't know. Let me. I think the best Christmas, hands down, was when we were in Houston. I was a young reporter there. My mother, I brought her in. My father had already passed away, but my mother, we brought her in from Lubbock I guess she was in Lubbock, to be here just for that Christmas. And my wife had worked a little bit extra at Herman Hospital down there in Houston. And so we had this massive Christmas with these massive presents. I mean, lots of them, because we had 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. And so we always wanted to be, Christmas was a big deal. But Christmas in Houston's different because you're probably going to mow your lawn over Christmas. And you're probably going to be in shorts when you mow your lawn. It's just rare that it gets, if it gets cold down there, you just don't want to be outside. It's too cold to be outside, at 32. But so we felt like, this just, it doesn't feel like Christmas. It's just, we're just kind of going through this process. And I said, well, I remember I just done a story over there on a food bank that was in a church in downtown Houston. I'm sorry. You get me so emotional at some of these stories. I don't mean to be, but so we said, I know, let's go get some food, and this will be kind of cool. We'll just take it to the food bank down there in the downtown Houston area. So we go to this place called the Food Lion, and we go through there. Everybody gets some stuff, and we ended up getting a lot of stuff that was basically kind of Hispanic food for some reason. I don't know. So we had 4 big bags of full. The younger son was too little to carry it, so Grandma helped him carry that. And then we went downtown and went down to the church that I knew where we had done this story. And it was, of course there was nobody. This was the 24th. This was Christmas Eve, and I was off work. And it didn't sound like there was anybody there. We were just like, oh crap, we're just, it's such a great idea, and but so I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of pounded on the door, and we were about to walk away, and somebody opened the door. So we thought, we said, well, gosh, can we, we've got some food here. Can we bring it in? And they said, well, we usually bring this in from some other places. And said, well, yeah, why don't you bring it in and you can just sit it down over here. Okay, help me get through this now real quick. But at that moment, this young family that turned out to be from Guatemala shows up, a mother and 3 children, small. This is so hard. No, it's okay. It's okay. We could have just left it outside that building there. They might have found it, but they came up and they said, "Can we give it to them?" And they said, "It's your food." So we had that teaching moment there of each of our children got to hand another child a bag of food. That they would, had we not been there at that time, they probably wouldn't have gotten anything, but they did. That's the best one.
It's beautiful.
I can't even write about that one. It's, gosh, you're really getting me.
Did you have siblings?
Yes. Oh my gosh, did I have siblings? I'm number 9 of 10.
Wow. Who was your closest?
The closest, I have a sister that's about 19 months older than me. Yeah, and then I have a little brother that's 7 years younger. So my parents obviously knew nothing about birth control. So the fact that there were 10 of us shows that.
When you introduce yourself to someone new, when you're just getting to know them, what's the story that you most often tell about yourself?
I don't. There's a lot of stories, but I don't know. That's that shy in the very private part of me, so I usually don't.
Who's your best friend?
My wife. Linner. She teaches here. Actually, she doesn't teach here. She's a curriculum director with in humanities. So she's about to retire. Yay. Since I'm retired.
What escapade will your friends remember you the most for?
Depends on which friends we're talking about. There's a group of friends that go all the way back to junior high school and even elementary to some degree that we were very, very close, and we're still pretty close now. And we went through all the growing up stuff together, and all the dumb stuff and stuff that I can't believe we lived through stuff. And now we're all comparing, scars and, it's even beyond the grandchildren point at this point. And procedures and medications and stuff like that. It's the funniest thing in the world. A bunch of old men and outdoing each other with, oh yeah, well, listen to this one. I've got all of this going on. It's kind of funny how we've done that. But we grew up playing football together and going all through high school and experimentation and different stuff like that kids go through. And so I'm not sure what they would remember me for. If you were asking about the Army, that'd be something completely different, with a different set of friends that are as close and meaningful to me as anything. What would they remember me for? I don't know. We drank a lot of beer, though, I can tell you. And especially in Germany, we tried to drink the place dry. Didn't make a dent, but we tried.
You tell one story about the Army?
Oh my God. There are a lot of stories about the Army, and the ones that I would tell, unless I was just with another veteran or something, but oh my gosh. Well, I could tell this one about how I ended up where I am today. You know, an 80%, almost 100% disabled veteran. Um, I volunteered for Vietnam, and I mean, I dropped out of school, volunteered for Vietnam in the Army. Didn't even tell my parents. They weren't happy because my dad needed to give me a ride to the bus station so I could go to Amarillo, and I told him, Dad, I need to go to the bus station, and here's why. And he's a World War II vet, you know. And my oldest brother was a Korean vet, and I had another brother that was a Cold War veteran. I mean, you know, you go on and on. It's like I did this because it was my turn, and I was the first one to go to college, and I was supposed to be in college, and I said, "No, I'm going to the Army. What's wrong with you?" You know. Anyway, so my orders for Vietnam were rescinded because of what was going on, and they sent me to Europe instead of to Vietnam. And of course, I was at first disappointed, which I know that sounds crazy. Maybe it is or was, but anyway, so I ended up there. And I'm a squad leader and stuff. I've got this whole squad I'm in charge of there where I lived. And the Yom Kippur War breaks out. That's October, I think it was 29th, 1973. When it broke out, and the Israelis were being attacked by the Egyptians and the Syrians. The reason why that's important is because I'm 1st Armored Division. 1st Armored Division is tasked with Mideast peace. So we are supposed to go to Israel. You know, the whole, 15,000 of us were going to, up and go to Israel. You know, that's a lot of C5s. So we're lined up. We're ready to go. You know, we've got all of it's called TA-50. It's all the gear you carry around and all that stuff like that. And the back of a truck, waiting to go. And, 12 hours pass. 12 hours, and we're in the back of these trucks and stuff. It's called a Kaserne, and it's the German word for fort. So we're on the Kaserne waiting to go out. Then we got out the gates, and our first sergeant, who's a very close friend of mine, comes around and starts telling all of us that in the 141st Signals, where I was, that the plans have changed. We're supposed to stand down and stand by. We can't go off base for 30 days or something like that. But the Israelis had turned around and just kicked the heck out of Syria and Israel, and Syria and Egypt, and wiping them out. I mean, literally. And that kind of put the war there, which had only been going on for a week at a hiatus, and so we didn't have to go ultimately. So there were 2 wars that I missed, and I'm telling you that because there I am, the squad leader. Remember, we're on this big truck is called a deuce and a half. It's 2.5 ton truck, and it's big, and it carries around a lot of equipment or men or people, different things like that, guns, weapons. So, but it's about 4.5 feet, the bed of the truck, 4.5, 5 feet off the ground. That's a pretty good height. So, being the genius that I was, and the guy in charge, we're supposed to be putting our equipment away, right? So this truck pulls up to the Quonset hut and these trucks are 2.5 tons. That's a lot, So when it stops, it doesn't just stop these things. So it kind of pulls up there, depending on how fast it goes, but not supposed to go real fast. But anyway, so I'm on the back of this thing, just kind of holding on. The gates down, the lips up, no, the lips out, and I'm standing there with that. It comes to a stop, but it stops and it lurches back. So here I am with my gear on, helmet, all that stuff like that. It throws me off the back of the truck. I end up on cobblestones. It breaks my ankle. I mean, the bone actually was broken, and it damages my knee. It hurts my backbone. I'm hysterical. I'm in and out of consciousness. I don't know. Sometimes I think I might be laughing or crying. I'm not sure which, but I'm in incredible, intense pain. And so they get me up and take me to an aid station. We have there, and I end up there, and they x-ray my leg and foot, and they said, well, it looks like your ankle's broken. They put a cast on me, gave me a couple of aspirin and some bed rest. That was it. Never checked that out. Anything else, it never did happen like that. And I'm supposed to be in this cast for 8 weeks to 12 weeks, something like that. And about 4 weeks into it, if you're a real tough G.I. Joe guy, you go in there and you say, cut it off, they'll cut it off. And so, they cut it off, cut the cast off. And that was a huge mistake. That ankle never healed. I mean, it was painful from the very first step, and it's been painful ever since. So I've dealt with that. I am 68 years old, so I've been dealing with that since I was 19. And that's the thing in the Army, that story that I would remember about that, of here I go, and I missed 2 wars. I missed 2 wars I'm supposed to go to. And then I'm injured so badly I'm 80% disabled. Probably be 100% before long. And I have friends that got shot that were as disabled as that. It's it's just one of those bizarre kind of things. So I did write a piece that I did for someone here called 1,000 Ways to Die in the Army, and getting shot's just one of them. There's a lot of ways to get injured or killed in the military, and most people who are injured in the military, and I have statistics that back this up, are not because of gunshots. It's because you fall out of a truck, or your airplane falls out of the sky, or your parachute doesn't open right, or I mean there's just, like I said, 1,000 ways to get hurt, and I found one of them, or it found me, so I get to deal with that until I die. So, but it's okay. I wouldn't change anything other than falling out of that stupid truck. So, anyway.
Did you have a job before the Army?
Yeah, I did. I used to joke about this. I've only had 3 jobs in my life. I hoed cotton. I was in the Army, then I've been in broadcasting. So I look back at my career, and the only honest job I ever had was hoeing cotton. And I'm not going to do that again. It's too much work. So I grew up with a lot of empresarios, the Hispanics that came over and worked, and the Spanish I learned was enough to get me killed, and it was really bad Spanish, but I could do it because I worked along beside them, and we used to joke that the only difference between us and the migrant workers was they got paid, and farm kids don't get paid. But they do. So they don't get paid very much, back then. But I grew up learning to work hard and respecting those people that did, and they worked so hard. My gosh, yeah. So that was the job. That was one job that I had before the Army. I worked for Carnation Ice Cream for a summer one time, and scooping ice cream for people, and. That, of course, that store's long gone now. The way Lubbock has changed.
Speaking of restaurants, which restaurant do you wish was still open but no longer is?
Oh man, there was a place called Jug Little's, and it was a barbecue joint, and it was on the east side, just down Broadway on the other side over there up that hill. And Jug Little, this is so funny. He was a real good barbecue guy, He was a terrible businessman, and his ex-wife, this is a true story, his ex-wife was the business mind behind it. She was a numbers person. He was a good cook. So on Fridays they had bands in there that would play, and usually were kind of acoustic or Western country and Western bands. I always played there on Fridays, and the place was just packed, and the barbecue was good, but you never knew what he was going to charge you. He might charge you, back then $1.50 for a plate, or he might charge you $1. He might just give it to you for free if he thought you. But Stubbs was the same way. About Stubbs barbecue. Stubbs was a terrible businessman. I don't think he could even read, really. Honestly, and I knew this guy. But he was a great cook. He just was a lousy businessman. Tom T. Hall came in, and Tom T. was a country and Western artist. And he used to come in out of Lubbock fairly often. But he went over there to see were there to see Stubbs. So Jug Littles and Stubbs. I wish Stubbs was here, because not necessarily for the barbecue. There's probably better barbecue today, but definitely for the artists he brought in. He brought in, all of the blues and old heavy rock and rollers and stuff like that. All of them came there and played this place, and that place wasn't a lot bigger than this room, quite honestly, but it was packed. I mean, it was a little bigger than this, but it was absolutely packed, especially at the nights when he had those bands that came in and played. So I wish. I mean, maybe Stubbs would be the place. I wish, just for the atmosphere.
Okay, we'll just do one more, I think.
Okay.
So
I'm talking way too much.
No, it's great. You've been in Lubbock at various times and moved away. So what keeps you here? What keeps you coming back?
We could live anywhere. We like it here. When we moved back, I was working for the network, and we were just sick to death of being on the road constantly. There's nothing glamorous about that life, I can tell you. It's extremely stressful. So I had a chance to move back to Lubbock to take over Channel 11 as their news director. Skip Watson was a friend of mine, and Skip, he's passed away now, but he and I were real close. He was moving to Lubbock ISD as their public relations officer. So they wanted me to come back and take over that newsroom and run it. So I came back to do that, and 5 years later I wanted to start my own business. I just wanted to, so I owned 4 radio stations here in town, and I've got them all sold off. And I've lived all over the world, and I don't know, I want to live here. All of my ghosts are here, all of that past and stuff is an accumulation of life that I think is important to me. And when I write, a lot of times those are the kind of things I write about. Are very much influenced by places like Wagner Park or Stubbs or other things like that. There's when you think about someone who's lived in the Alps for a while, in Europe and places like that, and been through the South Seas all over the world, a lot of beautiful places around the world. But we live here because we choose to live here. And my wife's parents were her father's passed away now, but they lived here too, so we were here taking care of them and being with some family here. But now there's only just like one person left, but yeah, we still want to be here. So, and I've seen the changes that Lubbock has gone through. It's interesting. It's not. It's disingenuous, I guess, for any of the old timers to complain about, oh, Lubbock's growing, it's changing. Well, of course it is, because it's either growing or it's dying. And Lubbock is growing, and it's going to be something much bigger than what it used to be. So it's like, if you don't like that, then move to Brownfield, or move to Levelland, or go someplace else that isn't growing. Those places are dying. So they're not growing like we are here. So, and I can't tell you why it is. It just is. Do you ever want to go knock on the doors and say, "Who are you? Where did you come from? How did you buy this $500,000 house? And how do you make your money? Or what are you, a drug dealer?" I mean, I don't know. I don't really know. I know the medical community. I know historically why, because I've been fascinated and obsessed with that question. Why is Lubbock here, and where is it, and how did it grow, and why? The answers to those are just fascinating, because it's not a normal progression of growth by any means. I mean, there's no major rivers, there's no major highways, there's no major rail lines coming through. But here we are, and it's 375,000 people in the 16-county area, and it's going to be 500,000 before we know it. So, yeah. But anyway, we're here because we want to be here, because we could be anywhere.
Great. Thank you.
This has been a conversation with David Walker, a resident of the South Plains for close to 70 years. We'd like to thank him for sharing his story with us, as well as the sponsors of Lubbock, U.S., the Helen Jones Foundation, Inc., and the Department of English at Texas Tech University, as well as our community partners and supporters, Lubbock's Adult Activity Centers, the Louise Hopkins Underwood Center for the Arts, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, the Special Collections Library and Sowell Collection at Texas Tech, and Texas Tech Public Media, KTTZ. We hope you'll join us next time for another untold story.